Hi everyone, welcome to Sake Unplugged. I'm Giulia, a sake educator and sake sommelier, and next to me, as usual, I have Cindy, a sake professional and Japan expert. Every week we take you on a sake journey and show you what's behind the sake curtains. This week, we are talking about a seasonal type of sake, Hiyaoroshi. So pour yourself a cup, get some Hiyaoroshi if you have it, and let's enjoy sake from the sake point of view. This week, we talk about one of our favorite season, and personally, this is my favorite season, which is Hiyaoroshi, aka autumn. We haven't talked about Hiyaoroshi yet. As I mentioned before, Hiyaoroshi is a sake that's released in autumn. And for those of you who are following us, thank you so much, by the way. You probably know that we started our Sake Unplugged journey in winter last year. So we haven't had the chance to talk about Hiyaoroshi yet together, right? So I'm really excited to get into this topic. How are you doing, Cindy? How is your Hiyaoroshi fever going?
I don't have Hiyaoroshi fever yet, but yeah, it's very true. We haven't really had the chance to drink Hiyaoroshi yet. However, I feel like we have already been talking about it because we have done other seasonal sakes, and I think it slipped in every now and then as a comparison. I know we had natsu sake in a previous episode. We talked about chiboritate, and we definitely also have mentioned Hiyaoroshi, and I'm totally with you. And I think maybe many other people are as well. It is probably the most popular of the seasonal sakes, and it's definitely my favorite. But I guess before we're getting much deeper into that conversation, I know, Giulia, you've prepared a bit of geek so we can get the basics out and let people know what we're actually talking about. So I'm giving you the floor, Giulia, for your geek.
All right, yeah, it's always good to start with a little bit of geek and then get into the other parts, the fun parts. So let's start with the name, right? So we know what we're talking about. Hiyaoroshi, the name is Hiya and Oroshi. So Hiya means cold, and Oroshi basically comes from orosu, which is like to take down as in take off a shelf, for example. So basically that means that is released in autumn. That's the shortest version of the explanation. It is released in autumn, but it's not made in autumn. I think we had this conversation when we talked about namazake or like summer sake. The fact that we give a season or a seasonal name to a sake might be a bit confusing for a lot of people. It's released in autumn, but it's not made in autumn. So actually, it is made in the coldest months of winters, in the coldest part of winter. And then what happened is that they make it and then they pasteurize it right away before storage. They keep it in the brewery for about 6 months. I love the way the Japanese talk about it. I think I said it multiple times. When they leave the sake to mature for a few months, they say that they let it sleep. So it sleeps in the brewery for 6 months and then it's released without being pasteurized twice. As a lot of you know, probably most sake is pasteurized twice. But then for Hiyaoroshi the second time, it doesn't happen. So, and that's when it's released. So it's not really the simplest thing to talk about the flavor profile, because as we know, each brewery has a slightly different way of making their Hiyaoroshi. But we can compare it, for example, to a namazake or unpasteurized sake, which has no pasteurization whatsoever. So because it's basically a half nama, its personality, it's a bit crispier than, let's say, a regular sake, which makes it closer to a nama, but it's a bit more mature. This is probably the simplest way I can describe the Hiyaoroshi. But there is actually another type of sake that is also released in autumn. Dun, dun, dun. It's like
Little did we know, right?
Little did we know, there's another type. It's called Aki Agari, and Aki literally is autumn, means autumn in Japanese, which is also made in the coldest part of the year, and is pasteurized before storage, left to sleep in the brewery for 6 months, but then is pasteurized a second time before being released. That's, let's say, the main difference between these two types of sake. So for the flavor profile, Aki Agari is a bit rounder in general, and there's more chances than taste amazing when warm.
And again, and I think it's also worth mentioning here, with these seasonal releases, there are no strict rules. So these are not legally defined terms. So basically, although there is an acknowledgement that Hiyaoroshi is made, stored, and pasteurized in a certain way in compared to Aki Agari, the terms are in speaking of the mix, right? So if someone refers to Aki Agari in a shop, they might talk about Hiyaoroshi or the other way around. So yes, it is confusing. So welcome back to the world of sake.
Yes.
But there's always variations, and especially with the seasonal releases, they actually have emerged to sell more sake and are much more marketing than anything else. And I mean, we can even confuse people a little bit more, I think, Giulia, because there is subcategories. We go back to the Japanese micro seasons. And I know you love the micro seasons, don't you?
Yeah, no, when it comes to these things, they love, we say in Italian, they love to cut a hair in four, meaning they go to like the tiniest details and even more. So yeah, technically there are subgenres, if you will, to this. And if you want to also know more about it, you can find about this Akiagari and Hiyaoroshi and their subgenres in the Sake Bible, which we already mentioned, because probably remember, guys, we had a few episodes ago, we had Takashi Eguchi or Umio, who made all the tasting notes for the Sake Bible. And I refer to this book a lot because it is properly a Bible. But so it's also mentioned here. So there's like 3 subgenre to this category. We have Nagoshi Sake, Akidashi, Ichiban Sake, and Banshu Umazake. And I'm not making this up, I swear. So I've never probably seen any of these categories, any of these like labeled so anywhere. So, and there's not even like, again, like a specific role for this, but then basically like Nagoshi Sake is released at the end of the summer. So it would be like the first Hiyaoroshi to go out in the market. So usually because usually it's still quite hot outside, the best thing will be to enjoy it chilled. And then you have Akidashi Ichiban Sake. Ichiban Sake, by the way, means like number 1 sake or something like that. And it's usually released in October, so a little bit after. And then the last one is Banshu Umazake, which is out of these 3 is the one that it's released and therefore aged the longest. So that's how they kind of like differ. But then again, most likely won't find these specific words on labels. So again, there is no real rule about it.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I think there are a lot more textbook things than real life usable knowledge. I do think if you go into a shop and you ask for one of them, even the shopkeeper might look at you with the raised eyebrow. It's really not something that you see, not even in Japan, because sometimes you feel, sure, I see this when I come to Japan, but actually this is not one of them. However, I feel it does make it easier to kind of understand how sake matures, right? Because then you realize, when you get something that's released in September, it is a little bit crisper. Whereas when you get something that's released at the end of the Hiyaoroshi season, it gets a little bit more matured and more umami laden. But I was actually thinking about something. And what I was thinking earlier was it would be really amazing if we could see if there's any commonalities between breweries who release their Hiyaoroshi in September, Because another thing that we might want to mention here is like everybody can do whatever they want, right? So whether I want to get my sake out in September, whether I want to do it in November, whatever style I want to make, that's totally up to me as a brewer again. So this is probably a nerd level plus 10. So I'm just thinking, is there a connection between breweries who make sweeter sake that they all choose to pull and release their Hiyaoroshi earlier in the season? Or is there regional preferences? And I'm telling you where I'm going with this because I do think this actually makes sense.
All right.
Because we're not talking about regionality in terms of sourcing everything from the same region. We're talking about regionality, about regional food, the culture, and their customs. So obviously, if you go higher up north in Japan, where seasons come in at a different time, I'm just trying to figure out if I'm in Akita and autumn arrives earlier. So all the food that the sake goes well with, all the mushrooms and the pumpkins, they all start to already come out in September, which means everything just moves forward a little bit, right? So keeping the example of Akita, their winter just comes so much earlier. So by the time maybe the last Hiyaoroshi are being released further down south, they're already knee deep in winter. So it would be a very different pairing. And I do believe Hiyaoroshi is very much also about pairing with what's happening. I mean, we just talked about seasonality, right? So I'm really kind of curious if there is such a thing within the seasonal releases, especially the autumn ones.
I'm thinking, yes. I'm thinking that definitely is, especially because we really never talk about regionality. It's something that it could be really its own topic, but it's of course really, really important. Not only because each region makes a different type of sake, because of course it's related to the weather and the food, but also thinking really like north to south, it's a completely different, almost like a different food culture. So there are differences for sure, and they have to go with their season. Of course, autumn is not going to be the same, and it's not going to be at the same time in Hokkaido and in, I don't know, Yamaguchi prefecture, I'm thinking. So definitely regionality has a big influence in especially this type of seasonal sake. So if this works with Hiyaoroshi, definitely works with all the other seasonal sake that we mentioned before.
Yeah, and I know my brain went on a little bit of a spin there for a minute, but I do think it's quite interesting. And we always want to look for stuff that is useful, right? I mean, we want to give people also a notion of accessibility and understanding things before they might come here, right? Or to just kind of put the 2 points together. So I'm curious. I'm going to keep my eye open for it and see if any of these appear in front of me or not. I mean, we have time, right? We have a whole season in front of us. So
yeah, I actually just saw the first release of Hiyaoroshi. So we are at the very, very beginning of the Hiyaoroshi game. And also what you just said really is worth mentioning, also because for a lot of people that come from abroad or they live abroad, I feel sometimes there is this perception of Japan as a country, but it's like one thing. And we know that Japan is very, very long country. So the seasons are completely different. There's so many different kind of temperatures, and the weather is different, and the food culture is different from north to south. So the more we say it, the more we repeat it, the better it is actually.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, you said it there, like we're recording this in early September. So I'm obviously in Japan and you're still in Italy as we're talking right now. And I have been looking around the shops, and I can report back that I haven't seen any of the displays yet. And when I say displays, if you haven't been to Japan, you might not be aware of what happens when these seasonal products come in. The shops really turn into this Disneyland of the season. So Hiyaoroshi, everything turns foresty. There is all the colors of the leaves. You see odd pumpkins and stuff. And it's really quite stunning. And the brewery shops do the same too. And I mean, it really helps them showcase and product place the sake, and obviously sells more. So no, unfortunately, I haven't seen that, but I do expect it, because I have also seen the breweries kind of social mediaing their Hiyaoroshi. So I'm quite excited to have them out anytime soon.
And that is actually one of the few things that almost all Hiyaoroshi around Japan have in common, because they might have a different flavor profile. Some of them might be crispier, might be richer, might be fruitier, whatever you want. But we can say like almost like 100% sure they will have an autumn theme label. So the label is something that we can say for sure, because as you mentioned before, it's all about leaves. It's all about these beautiful autumn colors, and they make sure that you see these bottles. So either they have a really cool design or really autumny leafy colors or something like that. And I personally love the labels that come out in autumn. They're so cool. Plus now, I know it's a slightly different topic, but we're still in autumn, right? Some sake, they even have their own version of Halloween sake, which basically is most of the time is a Hiyaoroshi with a Halloween label to it. But that's
there's no ghosts, there's no spookiness to this sake.
There's no that we know of. There's no ghosts. Yeah, but so they are really going on like 1,000 to make you see that yes, this is our autumn sake with the labels,
and it's really great. I do agree. It's really awesome. And for anyone who has made it to Japan or is in Japan, because my advice really is, if you do see them, buy them. And also, if you do travel around Japan and you go to a smaller village and you do see them there, definitely buy them, because a lot of these are very limited sales and it is a seasonal release. So they often don't make it past the town border. So if you're somewhere really in the Inaka, in the sticks, you might see some sake that you will never be able to buy anywhere else than just in that village. So it is really one of my tips to buy. If you don't know what to buy, then buy the Hiyaoroshi.
Absolutely. As you're in let's say, can we say you're in line with like philosophy of Japanese government right now?
Why? What does the Japanese government has to say about the Hiyaoroshi?
Drink more. That's the philosophy. Speaking of Hiyaoroshi though, this is the dreaded question, right? Do you have a favorite Hiyaoroshi, Sydney?
So this is a good one, because I actually do, but I also have to say, because seasonality, right? And also because my traveling, of course.
Right.
Last Hiyaoroshi season, I actually also been in Tochigi. I actually been traveling through Tochigi, and I've been visiting breweries that I now work with. And I pretty much last year just been drinking sake in this area during this time of the year, right? And then I moved on to Hokkaido. So I am a little bit biased. So I am going to hold up the flag for for Tochigi sake today. I very, very much loved last year's Watadabe Sahe Tokubetsu Junmai Hiyaoroshi. It was amazing. I really, really, really enjoyed it. And I was there a week or 2 weeks ago and there wasn't any. So I'm looking at for getting that into my fridge. And then I have just seen that Tonoike Shusaten Sanran Hiyaoroshi is coming out in September, and I'm really excited. For one, and for anybody who has missed it, Tonoike Shusa Sanran actually won the Kura Master this year. So they make super great, delicious sake, and I'm really a big fan for more than one reason. But I heard that their Hiyaoroshi is extremely good for richer foods. So if you have like stronger flavored food, that's what it pairs really, really well. I actually was told that it goes great with Chinese food. And I do like a bit of spicy, and I do like a bit of umami and everything. So I can't wait to get my hands on that one.
Yeah, like Sanran in general as like a lineup has a really rich umami to it. So I can see their Hiyaoroshi going well with more like spicy food. So yum. We're really waiting for that. Yeah.
I'm excited. They said September, and it is September. So who knows? Next time we compare, that might be my sake. I might even get a sake for you when you come back. You might have a little present for your return to Japan.
Oh, that will go so well with the cheese. and all the beautiful things we're going to have together, because you're coming to my place at the end of October for a sake party dinner. So I'm so excited about it.
I am.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to it as well. But tell me about your favorite. I'm pretty sure you have a couple of them, right? You always have a few sake up your sleeve.
So actually, in this case, I kind of like throw the stone and then I hid my hand, because I don't really have a favorite Hiyaoroshi. I'm like so excited just for Hiyaoroshi to be out. I'm just going to jump from Hiyaoroshi to Hiyaoroshi. I'm so happy. But dun, 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 I do have, of course, one of my favorite, probably my favorite. And of course, I'm biased as well, because my favorite comes from my brewery.
But you have to talk about Hiyaoroshi, not just any sake. This is the Hiyaoroshi episode.
No, it's a Hiyaoroshi from my brewery. Sorry.
Okay. I thought you're just going to give me any random sake from the place that you love. So it's like,
No, it's the Hiyaoroshi, which, by the way, has, speaking of labels, has a very kakkoi version of their label.
Kakkoi meaning cool, by the way.
Exactly. I was getting there, which is actually a kimoto.
Nice.
So it's a kimoto style Hiyaoroshi. They're always very, very good with their umami, but still very balanced. And I'm really excited because they're combining basically it's a genshu. So it's undiluted type of sake, and it's a kimoto, but it's made with Yamada Nishiki rice. So it's not going to be too powerful. They always have a pretty good balance with their richness and umami. So I'm really excited to try it this year as well.
That sounds really lovely, I must say. Ne? So Hiyaoroshi season is on. The wheels are turning. We're ready to go to the shop and get a lot of it. And yeah, well, I really hope that a lot of our listeners get their hands on some Hiyaoroshi as well. We are a little bit late, though, for the celebrations, because one thing that we haven't mentioned yet is the 9th of September is Hiyaoroshi Day.
Right.
So we actually are recording this right now. It's a little bit before, so we will be kampai on the 9th. But if you're listening to this afterwards, prepare for next year. You know now, Hiyaoroshi is the 9th, and I'm not entirely sure why. And it's, again, not official.
Right.
It is said that 1 or 2 prefectures came up with it, right? And they're kind of making it a thing. So it might not be a big deal this year, but who knows? Maybe next year, this is a really big celebration all over the world, and we're all kampai on the 9th with our respective Hiyaoroshi. So let's see what happens with that one.
And speaking of sake days in general, we do have a very specific date for Sake Day, which is October 1st, which is about all kind of sake. So we'll see probably a lot of things coming up for that day. So I am really excited for Sake Day.
Yeah, I mean, there's already plenty of things out and about. So anybody who wants to kampai for Sake Day on the 1st of October, we're giving you a fair head start to purchase sake and to plan for it. There's still many online events from different groups and different educators and breweries and organizers. So check what's happening in your town, because there's also places that now have in-person events. So we really hope that loads of us can all kind of raise a glass on that day and kampai a little bit.
It's going to be so much fun and probably also so much sake. Thanks again for listening to today's episodes, guys. We really hope you enjoyed your time with us. We'll be back, of course, next week, same platform, same time, and we'll have another interview for this season. Next time, we'll have with us Lorenzo Ferraboschi, the founder of Sake Company, and I can really call him the sake guy in Italy, because he is the sake guy here. So I'm really excited to talk to him. So
I cannot wait.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit more Italian on the next episode for sure. So guys, thank you again for listening to us. Make sure to subscribe to Sake Unplugged if you haven't done yet. If you like what we are doing here and you want to support us, you can also find us on Patreons, of course, under the name Sake Unplugged. So we'll also wait for you there. Don't miss the next episode. And until then,
have a nice sake.